Wow. Brad Pitt has a new life. Now, what conversation would I have with him? I mean, I don't have it. I'd love to practice it. Hi, James from IngVid. I mean, if I ever met Brad, I would love to have a conversation because we're like, see how we look alike? No, we don't. This lesson is on how can you practice conversation when you don't have a partner? It seems, I might say oxymoron, practicing conversation without a partner when you need to have a partner to have a conversation. Okay. But, so that's not the word I would use, but it seems, it seems impossible, right? I'm going to give you 4 ways today that you'll be able to practice, which will give you the practice of conversation without having a partner. Don't leave just yet. I haven't lost my mind. We're going to go do it, okay? Now, why? Why is this important? Well, number one, if you don't get the practice in, you don't have the fluency, the pronunciation, or even the vocabulary to maintain a real conversation if you don't get the practice. But if you don't have a partner, you don't get a practice, so you're at what we call a catch-22. You don't have this, and you need this in order to get that. So in order to have a good conversation, you need practice in a conversation. But if you don't have a partner to have a conversation, you won't get good at conversation. Yeah, it's a problem. So I want to give you something and a structure or a method so you can take apart that you can practice and notice the next time you have a conversation, you're much better and improved so that you can, wait for it, create a relationship so they will have further conversations with you and you'll have a conversation partner. And that's why we're doing this. So when Brad and I meet, we'll have the perfect conversation. Anyway, moving on. So before I go on, this video is for Alex. Mom, I'm very sorry I forgot your name. You were such a lovely lady. And baby Matthew. I was at a restaurant with a friend up at Shinobu in Toronto, and this Russian family, beautiful little family, came over and said, hi, you James from engVid? And I was kind of, yeah. And they said, we watch in Russia. And I would say, hi, you're probably back in Russia. And baby Matthew probably isn't a baby anymore, he's bigger, but it was brilliant meeting you. And this lesson's for you, okay? Anyway, so this is 4 ways to improve conversation skills when you're alone. I've explained the why, so let's talk about the how. What I'm going to use is, well, the how is actually right here on the board, but I'll go into it. We're going to start trying to use the 4 methods of learning that we have when you learn a language, which is listening, speaking, or which are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. But I'm going to be listing them a little bit differently in order to emphasize what parts we want to work on to improve our conversation skills alone. So let's go to the board. This way. Okay, so you notice I have input and output. And this includes the skills I talked about. See, like you're repeating yourself. Yes, but I'm breaking them down into different segments because each part, in my opinion, and from what I have read, there is a way of using these things. And input is obviously putting stuff inside your head, you could say, put in. And when you input stuff, that's things like reading and listening. Okay? You're not producing anything yourself. You're sitting there. And the stuff's coming in. Input. Output is like out, putting out. That's me right now. I'm speaking. I'm speaking to you. That's output. Also, writing is output. It means I'm putting out information or I'm communicating with the world. Input is taking information in to understand the world. Output is to put information out. All right? So let's go. So that's input and output. Next, what I want to do is talk about pacing. Pacing is what I'm doing now. I'm walking. But how fast you walk, how long the strides, what is the pace, the speed? When we talk about pacing in language, at the beginning of this video, you probably noticed that I was speaking very, very fast or very quickly. My pacing was fast. I've slowed it down now. Every language has its own flow and its own pace. For example, "Ni hao ma" in Mandarin is not the same as "Как дела сегодня" in Russian. The pace is different, right? So we're going to look at pace and how we're going to look at the speed. Let's get rid of this bracket here. The breaks in the language. In English, we have certain breaks. just as they do in Japanese. Some breaks are harder, some flow, like ¿Cómo estás, muy? Right? If you're doing it in Spanish, it flows, right? Less break. We're also going to look at mimicking. Mimicking is not the same as imitation. And I made a imitate. It's delicious, yes, it's nice, but it's not delicious. So no, so This is me to show I made a mistake. It happens to everyone. All right, so imitate, sorry. So imitating or copying is, imitate means to do something similar to. Mimicking is to like exaggerate, and sometimes you do it to make fun of something, right, or to ridicule. But we're going to use this particular skill of imitating and copying to help enhance your English. Then we're going to look at some creative practice. A couple of things that you can do, or one thing in particular, to open up your mind. So when you get locked into a pattern or a habit, we call it a rut, it's harder for you to learn new things or new things come in. But if we can break that up a little bit, it gives your brain the opportunities to start fresh or be new, so it can absorb more information. In fact, what I said here is opening the mind so it can be more responsive and learn more faster. Let me repeat that again. If we open your mind, we can make it more responsive, means it can move faster and it can learn faster. This is important because what a lot of people forget is when things stop being fun or interesting, you quit, you stop. And it's important to remember, if you've been even watching this video, you've already given me 10 minutes of your life. If you've been studying for a year, you've been studying and giving a year of your life to something. You don't want to quit because it's no longer fun or interesting. To me, that has been a waste of something you worked on that you clearly want. But if we can make it interesting and fun and you can learn faster, you can get more of what you want here and now, will make you better at what you want and get the things you want faster. In this case, it could be getting a job, getting a relationship, or just being able to travel. You put the time in, so let's make it worthwhile for you, okay? Anyway, so these are the 4 things we're going to practice in order, or these 4 methods in order to help include and increase or improve our conversation skills when we don't have a partner. A lot of people said it couldn't be done, but they weren't me. You ready? See you in a second. We're going to go to the board for those lessons. Okay, so we're back. So what I want to do is take on 2 of the methods right away, which is input and output. They're like brother and sister. You need one to go with the other, and they usually go together. When we're studying in English, if you're doing writing, we always say it's best to read a lot first. And if you're writing a lot, we say read a lot. So they go together. Anyway, I'm going to come here and say a simple statement. Conversation is like a 2-way street. Okay? In a 2-way street, you have traffic going this way and traffic going this way. It's not just about you, okay? You need to understand other people as much as you need to be understood. You need to see their perspective if you want to have good communication. And in this case, I'm going to be using input to substitute as your partner, your reading partner. Oh, sorry, your reading partner. I'm going to use reading to be your partner. Now you might say, how does reading substitute as a partner? Well, it's not just reading. We have to specifically talk about something called fiction, reading fiction. And you might say, what is fiction? Fiction is a story that's not true. If you think about romance novels, science fiction novels, comic books, they're not real, but they are stories. They're made up stories. Fiction. What they have found, or doing studies they have found, is that people who read a lot of fiction tend to understand other people's more. They tend to have more empathy. Empathy is they feel and understand others, right? Or they feel the pain or the happiness other people feel. So why is this important in our conversation skill when I'm by myself? Well, if I don't have a person to speak to, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't work. You need to interact with someone. And if I can't react or work with a real person, the next best thing is a fiction novel. Because as the writer writes, they are asking us to get into someone else's head and understand them and understand how they communicate. And even though it's not one-on-one real person, it's similar enough that they have found that it improves people's ability to communicate after reading a lot when they meet real people. In fact, they say that in some ways, the people who read a lot of fiction have better communication skills and interact better with people than people who just talk. Because it's the whole thing of seeing things from their perspective, taking your time to understand it, because you can't, they don't allow you to speak. You just take the information in, input, and as you're taking it in, you're like, okay, I got it. And if you don't get it, you don't understand the story at all. It just makes no sense. But when you do get it, the story comes alive. And you're like, wow, that's so cool. And what's really cool is you get to actually say something after. But being understood is great. Letting people know you understand them is sometimes better, because then they give you the opportunity to be understood. And by the way, when we go up here to the board, I do have a little statement on that, which is, I want you to read and read fiction in order to get that perspective from others and that empathy and that, ability to work in social circles. But I also want you to know it's not just me saying this. Here's something right here where it says, okay, here's something. I'm saying reading helps people modestly improve understanding and their mental reaction to others in social situations. I took this out of Psychology Today. It was written in 2018 from a research study, okay? That's because they found that, and I found that in my classrooms. The ones who read the most were the ones much more capable of communicating with others, right? And that's all this is saying, is like you read when you're in a social situation, which is in a school environment, on a date, or in a business environment, you're the one who can actually speak to other people because you're listening to them, and that's the input part. So the reading becomes the partner that you need when you don't have one. Cool? Good. So now that you got, because you want to talk, you're like, I did all this listening, I'm taking other stuff in, when is it my turn? Well, let's talk about writing. Now you might say writing has nothing to do with speaking, but there is a thread that they both have, or something that joins them together, which is thought. The one thing about writing is, or speaking, is when I'm speaking to you, I can make a mistake. That mistake is instant. I wouldn't say it's permanent, but in a way it's instant, and you can be judged on that right away. When I write that same statement on a piece of paper, you don't know what I've written until you get to see it. So I get the opportunity when I write it down to change it, modify it, improve it, look for mistakes in it. In fact, when I do lessons, I do that very same thing. I write all this stuff on the board, then I get a friend to look it over and say, look it over. And he checks for mistakes. I go, okay, great. Okay, let's see if I made a mistake. Because sometimes I miss something. And by the time you see it, you're like, it's pretty good. I'm like, yeah, well, we correct it. Now, that wouldn't happen if I didn't do that. You might go, mistake, 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 mistake. And you'd be so caught up on my mistakes, you wouldn't actually see what I'm trying to say. Writing gives you the opportunity to correct what's going on up here, or to see what's going on up here, and then get the help you need to fix it. Now, the beautiful thing about writing is you can be creative with it. You can change things around and experiment to see. You can be more forceful, or you can be softer, and you can do all of that while doing it. You're actually doing it with repetition, improving the natural flow that will come out of your mouth, because as you fix it, you're not just fixing it for the paper, you're fixing it for your mind. So your mind knows the most accurate or the most correct way of expressing what you want to say to people so they can understand you. So you're writing, a page a day, 2 pages a day. And I'm not saying go crazy, but I would say, yeah, take a day. Write out a page, a paragraph of expressing yourself. Put it away for about 10 minutes, come back to it, then write it, then read it again. Read what you've written. Look for mistakes. You'll find them. If you put it away, you'll find them, and then correct it. Put it away again. Then come back to it. You might even find other ones. We need fresh eyes sometimes. But as you're doing that, each time you're correcting it, you're asking your mind to be more critical and to learn. Learn from what you're doing. And by doing that on a regular basis, you'll start noticing when you speak, you just speak better. All right? So, when I wrote over here, and I was saying, writing does what speaking does not. It gives you time. That's what you want to think about. It gives you time to think about the structure. And in this case, I'm talking about structure as in grammar. What is the grammar? What is the syntax? You can't do that when you're speaking, because as you're thinking about getting the words out, you don't have time to go in your head and say, stop, go back, replace, and redo. Okay? But writing does that. Okay? And because you're doing that, you're able to improve it, modify it, and learn from it. Okay? And by the way of that repetition, by repeating it, you create a more natural form of expression. What I mean by that is through the repetition, I could say ni hao ma, ni hao ma, ni hao ma. But I've done it for so many years, and when I had some students I was teaching, ni hao ma, ang hao, ma, ang hao, bu hao, bu, bu. Or if you're Russian, как дела сегодня? Хорошо? Нет, хорошо. Почему? Потому. It's like, what? Where is that coming from? Repetition over months. Not perfect, it's not supposed to be, but I don't think about it. But I needed to repeat it. And I did that on paper, believe it or not. And then I would speak to people and hey, and I'd say, stop, that's all the Russian I know. Anyway, so with writing, we get the ability to repeat before we go into public. And after we get, we go over it enough and then work on it and perfect it, it will come up much naturally when we actually speak with other people. So combining these two, input and output, we get the being able to express ourselves fully, being able to change it. That's the modify part that's important. You don't want to say the same thing over and over again. I've actually repeated the same information to you about 3 times in different ways, and you may not have noticed it because I changed the words to give each person who needs it a different message to take. But then I want the input because when people are speaking, if I want the conversation to continue, remember I said it's a two-way street. I need to understand what they're saying to me, and they need to know that. Because when that happens, they felt understood, they will continue, and I will actually gain a partner to speak to. Remember, if you don't have anyone to speak to now, every opportunity you get might be the only opportunity, and you have to take advantage of that. And you only do that by practicing beforehand. Like if you know anything about Batman, he's prepared for everything. That's your job now, with input and output. Now I want to go and talk about the other 2 methods I've given you, right? We will do that in the section before, so remember this. Input, read, but don't just read fiction. You can even take some notes on it, but read to get the perspective of others. Output, write, correct, modify, learn. You ready? 2 more methods to go. Okay. Now, I'm going to be talking to you really... Wow, that pace was very fast. That's pacing. How do you know? Because now I'm going slowly. Pace. I want to talk about pacing and mimicking here. Now that noise I did at the beginning and then how I slowed it down is to show you that there are different speeds. What is the pace? When you're walking, you can walk slowly or you can walk very quickly. You can have a long walk that's quick or short. It's different pacing. And why is this important? Because every language has its own pace. Spanish tends to flow, and it's a little faster than English. English is slower, but it's faster than Japanese. Japanese is like, oh God, I can't believe I'm doing this. Hi, 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 hi. It's like cut, cut. When you say like, ohayo gozaimasu, ohayo gozaimasu. See, chop, chop. In English, you say, how you doing? It's like, how are you doing? Right? In German, sprechen Sie Deutsch. Sprechen Sie Deutsch. I guess sprechen Sie Deutsch. The pacing is different. How it comes out is different. And every language has its own natural rhythm and speed, and you have to learn it. You change ohayo gozaimasu to ohayo gozaimasu. Japanese people go, what are you saying? Well, I said the words, but I changed the pace, and it's confusing. The same happens in English, and that's why many people who speak properly, but get the pace wrong, found that they are not understood. Why am I telling you this? Because I told you in this lesson we want to work without a partner, or we're forced to work without a partner, but we have to improve. We talked about writing, we talked about reading. Remember those 4 skills? Now we're coming into listening. Listening is how you get the pace of a language. And one of the best ways to do it is through music. Because when you get music, you notice when it's a good song, you bounce to the beat. You bounce. You're talking to your friend at a club. You don't want to. Your body starts to move. And you get to know what the beat is. You start moving with it. And it's almost involuntary. But it's natural. And when we use language, and there's music, when people sing, they sing with the same kind of pacing. I had a class one time where I had students listen to a song in English, and then it was a Japanese song, and then we had it with English subtitles, and people tried to sing it, but they didn't speak Japanese. So they tried to sing it in English, and it just sounded horrible. And the Japanese people were like, oh, they couldn't get it. They weren't actually listening to what the pacing of the Japanese language was, so they couldn't sing it with the song. I like songs because, and I'm bringing it to pacing, singing is how do I say? There's a natural rhythm with music and we follow it. We don't have to think about it, okay? And when you're working with a language and you've got that natural rhythm, you can pick up on the pace of the words. So we can switch it up and it's not so difficult. In real speech, we tend to focus on the content of what we're saying and the meaning, and we go bap, bap, bap. But I don't know, actually I could challenge you. Most of you out there have an English song you like, and when you sing it, you don't sound Russian, you don't sound Japanese, you don't sound Indian, you don't sound Chinese, you don't sound Spanish, you sound like you're English. But only for that 33 minutes and 45 seconds, right? Because you got the pacing down of the language, you're not trying to think about it, you just let that rhythm flow. So my suggestions for improving your listening skills as part of a conversation, because when we talked about reading, that's input, but it's not actually working on the auditory, it's getting into the mind, how the brain works. But to get into how the words actually come out, listening, I would suggest we go for pacing with music. And pacing includes, and let me go here for you. Okay, I'm just going to read this out. Every language has a natural speed, I just discussed that with you, and breaks and flow. So when we talk about pacing, it's also the break in the language. Does it flow and there's no break? That would be Spanish. ¿Cómo estás hoy? Right? ¿Cómo estás? Together, it's almost no break. There is, or you wouldn't know the words, but it's very difficult to hear versus how are you? Much easier in English, right? So there are breaks and the flow. The flow is like sometimes the language is more sing-songy with when you deal with Chinese. It's an Asian language, but it's much more sing-songy. Ni hao ma versus, as I said, Japanese. Ohayo gozaimasu. It's not sing-songy at all, but they're both Asian languages. So there's flow, there's break, and there's a natural speed to it. The Chinese is faster than the Japanese. So by learning the music, and I don't mean music, singing, you know I was getting there. Singing and listening to music will help you with the natural flow of how the words should come out of your mouth when you're speaking. And some people go, well, I don't see it, I don't get it. I will think about it. I've had students try to sing and they find it extremely difficult, harder than speaking. And I say yes, because when we're doing singing, the singers use the music and their lyrics, which are the words they're using, for emphasis, to get emotion, to move you. And it's very difficult because they might even extend or exaggerate sounds, which helps you with pronunciation, by the way. And when they're doing all that stuff, it's harder to follow along if it's not your first language. But being able to master that and getting that out, then when you're listening to someone speak, it's so much easier because the words are used like little boxes the proper way with no exaggeration or form. So it's easy for you to get that information in. So without having a partner, listening to television is good. Listen to music. You'll enjoy it because it is fun. There's always a genre. Genre is type of music. I don't care if you like death metal. I don't care if you like that. I don't understand it and I speak English, okay? I'm like, yeah. That's how I sing it. Or if you like the opera, right? People will love that. They can't change the flow too much, or even native speakers don't understand it, regardless of the language, especially in English. So by getting to your music, listening to it, and really listening to it, listening to when the breaks are, and you'll find that there's commonalities or common patterns where they have to have a break for the maximum meaning to be taken in. That will help you with your listening skills on your journey to practice without a partner. Cool, right? So I've got you reading and writing, reading fiction, not boring textbooks, okay? So you can read something you enjoy as long as it's fiction. I've got you writing, so write out all those nasty little thoughts, things you think in your head you won't say to people, like, I want to say this, right? Correcting it and then finding a better way of saying it. So we've got that. And now I've got you for your listening part, right? Actually listening to people, listening to music. Here's a little hint. When I did a video on it before, how to learn from YouTube, you can turn up the speed of the music. So go from 1 to 1.5. I won't go into it now, but go check through my videos. You'll find one, how to use YouTube to increase your English. And I tell you actually how to use the system to speed up the English so that you can learn, like hear the music faster, and then you can slow it down so it's much easier for you to pick up the sounds. And you'll notice in natural conversation, you'll hear things clearer and faster. You're welcome. All right. Now, I've gone from listening, and I want to touch on the fourth skill, which is called mimicking. Okay? Oh, sorry. Before I go to mimicking, I almost forgot. Slang. The cool thing about music, especially pop music, everybody knows. Pop music, pop. Pop music, they use slang. Slang is like shortened language. Like come on, instead of come on, right? Cool language, fat, pretty hot and tempting, stuff like that. In popular music, a lot of slang that you will not find in a dictionary will be in music. And because music's coming out every single day, unlike a book comes out now, you got to wait 2 years for it to be published again. Songs are coming on the radio all the time. It gives you a new opportunity to learn the new cultural words that are coming out that won't be in a dictionary for a year or maybe 5 years before people go, oh, this is a new word that we have, right? There's something we call about body hacking or biohacking. Came in like 2017. It's not a real word. A guy named Dave Asprey started doing this stuff. And then the whole world was like, you can biohack by having bullet coffee and taking sleep like this. And it became a new word. You couldn't find it in a dictionary or in a translator, but people were using it. But they were popping it in music, right? Hacking this and hacking that. So it's a good word to catch up on the cultural norms that are going on before they're written down on paper and become official language instead of slang. Now to go to mimicking. Mimicking and speaking. Mimicking. Mimicking is like copying and like imitating. It's actually both and a bit more. Mimicking is the first thing you did to learn a language as a child. And you say, what do I mean? Well, when you mimic something, you copy and usually you exaggerate it. A lot of times we exaggerate when we're mimicking to make fun of somebody or something. I am the biggest and the best and the greatest guy ever. I'm mimicking somebody. I'm exaggerating. This person doesn't speak like this. But when I do like the little accordion with the little fingers and I brush like this, you go, I know who it is. If you put the two of us together, I sound like a terrible example. But because of my exaggeration, you can see where it came from and you understand. Now, when I get a little better and say, I am the best, and then you go, oh yeah. The best students I've ever seen when they were speaking, the best time they were ever speaking is when they made fun of me. I would say something and I say, we have to do this now. And they'd go, teacher, you don't speak good English. I said, we don't understand. I go, what do you mean? They go, you have to do this now. But it was almost perfect. I went, no accent, perfect cadence. Whoa, where did you get that from? Just making fun of you, teacher. In fact, there's a couple things I say that people make fun of. And when I give it back to them, they always laugh because it's sort of like, oh, and I go, this is what it sounds like to me. And I exaggerate it. I think for me, it's the word can't, because I say can't. And people go, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I go, what do you only say? Can't. I mean, it's terrible. But then they're like, oh, because I sound like a real American, I can't do it. But I have to make this funny face to do it. And if you notice me doing that, that's my mimicking. I can't. The importance about mimicking is this. It teaches you motor skills. What are motor skills? In the can't, I notice how I have to raise my mouth on one side, which I don't normally do. And I can feel it. And because it's exaggerated, and that's why I kept talking about exaggeration, I become aware of what I am doing. Now, once I become aware of it and I copy and I do this a few times, or I keep doing it, it becomes more natural for me to go there and it drops so I can go, can't to I can't. And I can drop it and get more and more natural until it becomes my natural form of speaking. So by using mimicking, you can exaggerate at first and then bring it back and go smaller and smaller until your accent drops off and you're starting to sound like the native speakers you want to sound like. What's the best way of doing this? Okay, here I'm just talking about it being the first form a child learns for their first language, which is you. But movies. We got you listening to music. I want you to watch movies. I want you to watch TV programs. What? But teacher, we're supposed to study. I'm like, you are studying. Watch them. Get a certain part of the movie or the television program. Stop it. Copy the actor. And it's not just, remember I said motor skills for your mouth. It's also the body. Body language is very important with language. Perfect example. Please, Italian people, don't get upset. But when I'm talking and I'm feeling Italian, I don't want to get it to you. You know, I got to move my hands like this. This is Italian. I've never seen an Italian talk like this. I think there's something wrong. I go, your arms are broken. You know what I'm saying? You got to move your hands. And when I do that, my voice changes. And when I'm speaking Japanese, I keep my hands very close to my body. Very short movements. So, ohayo gozaimasu. And I feel more Japanese. But I would never say, ohayo gozaimasu. They would say, he's angry Japanese. So it's not just the motor skills for how to speak, but taking on the body language helps you get into the language, well, not just the body language that is in the language. Every language has a body language. We know what it looks like to see an American, right? Hey, I'm an American, big body language. To see an Asian with a smaller one, and the language kind of flows like that. So when watching movies, you get to see the whole body as well as how the mouth works, and you get more of a flow through your body to make it much more natural. There's nothing worse than seeing someone trying to speak another language with a completely stiff word, like Spanish is like, hey, ¿cómo estás? Eh, mi amigo. It's very loose. Try and do that like this. Hey, ¿cómo estás? Mi amigo. Spanish people are like, whoa, there's something off with that. And it's true. But by getting that flow through the body and the motor skills through the mouth, you'll find that the language flows out of you more naturally. In fact, I've read a couple of books by people who speak multiple languages, and they say when they switch languages, their body language switches with it. There's one book called Fluent Forever, and they talk about that process of, watching, getting into more than just the words, but taking on your whole body and mouth and mind into the language itself. So we've talked about how we can do listening with pacing, with music, so getting that pace, the flow. We've talked about speaking and mimicry, using, mimicking people, not just how they speak up here, but try and get your body into it so you can actually step into that language and perform it in a much more natural way. All right? I got one more thing to do before we go, because as you notice, the bonus has been sitting there in homework. I want to give you a little something to open your mind. You ready? See you in a second. Okay, so in the lesson I told you I'd give you 4 techniques that you can use separately, but perhaps I hope you will put them together to make a complete lesson for yourself to practice without a partner. I explained what they were and why, as in reading for input to understand someone's perspective. They become your partner. Output speaking, writing it down to clarify your thoughts, make them clear so that you are clear when you speak. Pacing, how to get the pace of the language even though you're not speaking to someone, by practicing by singing music, listening to videos and trying to sing along so that you get better moving your mouth around. And then we did mimicking for actual speaking, copying with your body as well as your mouth to get the motor skills to sound, proper pronunciation and proper, slang. I almost forgot slang. Getting the proper cultural references and slang. Now, those are the 4 I gave you, and I said doing those will help you to practice without a partner, so you can improve consistently. I'm going to give you one more thing, or 2 little things you can do, but to open your mind, to be more creative. Because when you're practicing without a partner, it can get boring. And I want to make sure that it's not boring for you. It's interesting, it's fun, and then you are ready for anything that might come up. It's like a utility knife. A utility knife will have like a knife, a screwdriver, and many other different things, and you never know which one you're going to need. It's very small, you can carry it with you. So in order to be prepared for anything, because luckily if you're reading enough fiction to get different types of understanding, and you're doing enough mimicking from different situations from television, you'll be prepared for most social situations. But to get you ready, ultimately, I'm going to give you 2 different methods. One is the flashcards method. The other is the envelope method. Now I'm going to start with the flashcards. Actually, I'll wait because I'm going to give it to you in the bonus section. Dun, 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 dun. So I'll give you my envelope method. The envelope method is simple. What I want you to do is just you've been reading and writing, take some vocabulary that you had difficulty with, write those words on pieces of paper, okay? Take those pieces of paper and put them randomly into an envelope. Don't seal it, keep it open, and then just go in the envelope, grab out a word, take the word, quickly say a sentence. That's it, randomly. Make it more challenging. Go in the envelope, take out 2 words, and you have 2 things you can do. You can either make 1 sentence using these 2 random words, or make 2 sentences using one of these words in each sentence. It's up to you. It's to play. It will force your brain to be much more adaptive. So when it comes to an environment, you have all these words in your brain, and you'll be able to bring them out when you need them, right? You won't always be watching television be a play, but there's nothing worse than having information in your brain trapped that you can't get at. This will force you to take it out when you need it, or when you don't expect it, take it out, be able to use it and use it properly. And you'll be surprised how you start in the real world when you talk to someone and get the opportunity, being able to start bringing out new vocabulary you've learned from your listening, reading, writing. Listening, reading, and writing. Yeah, all four. Now, finally, the bonus I wanted to give you, so you got a bonus, is a new way to do flashcards. Most people do flashcards. They have one word. They'll say, for example, book. You want to learn book. So I'm going to take a Hebrew word, sefer. You've never heard sefer before, right? Or sefer. So this is sefer. S-E, okay? S-E-F-E-R, right? This means book. But I don't want you just to put book. Sure, you're going to put book in there. But I want you to put down on your new one, so you're going to use that, write the meaning book, and write a sentence. I don't have room to write a sentence, so we're not going to do that part. But you would write a sentence, a small sentence, using it like, I like sefer in the morning. It makes no sense. But I like to read sefer on the bus, okay? Now, the other thing I would want you to do is write it in phonetics. Now, sefer is like this. It's not sefer, that's what it looks like in English. So I would say this, I would write this. Sefer. And they'll go, that's correct, but they will probably look and go, you go sefer, they go, no, it's like sefer. You go, no, this is not correct. You go, sefer, correct, not correct spelling. I go, I don't care. This is the phonetics. This is what it sounds like when an English person hears it. So I'll write sefer. I know sefer means book. So now I know how to say it, and I know what it means. And the last thing I'll do is draw a picture. By drawing that picture, it helps to stay in my mind because we're picture creatures. Everything we see is usually an image. I have the image, I have sefer, and I go, sefer, book. Quickly turn over, book, sefer. In the old days, flashcards are, you have this and the word. I want you to make yours more juicy or better for communication, helping you with your conversation by adding little pieces of extra information to make it go deeper into you. It'll come out in a much more natural form. That's why we're going to do the sentence, which I'm not doing right now. Write out a sentence to help you go, oh, okay, yeah. Reading sefers will help you with knowledge. Anyway, I'm going to finish this off. So you've got two little things you can do. I want to give you homework. Your practice is to do this. I want you to take one of the methods I've given you, or either the listening, okay, let's put it this way, output, input, pacing, or mimicking. Take one, spend that day working on that method, okay? So you're not spending hours, maybe half an hour to an hour if you have it. Do one each day, so that's 4 days on. Take a day off, okay? So take Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, do it. Don't do anything Friday. Then repeat Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So you're breaking up, changing the days, and you're giving yourself a break, okay? By doing that on a regular basis, eventually what will happen is each skill will get better and better, and you can combine them until you're actually improving your conversation without a partner. And you will be so surprised how well you communicate, even though you don't have a live partner to work with. Now, I want you to do me a favor. Leave a comment below on which is your favorite method to use, and when do you use it. Anyway, I want to say thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you find it very useful. I'm sure you will if you actually put the principles into practice. And I can't wait for you to have your first conversation. Anyway, before I go, there's no quiz to this one, but I still want you to go to engVid, which is www.ing, as in English, vid as in video.com. Go check out myself, other videos I have on conversation and communication, and other teachers. You'll have a brilliant time. Remember, you don't have a partner, so what are you waiting for? Have a good one.